Let me tell you about two people. Same city, same age, same government school, same broken Wi-Fi at home, same family that never once sat down and said, "Let me teach you how the world works." 10 years later, one of them is stuck. Not because he's lazy, not because he's stupid. He works hard. He's online every single day. He consumes content constantly, but somehow nothing is changing. He knows a little about everything and a lot about nothing. He talks about goals, but can't explain how he'll reach them. He feels like he's always one video, one course, one motivation speech away from the version of himself he keeps imagining. The other person? Nobody saw it coming. No degree that impressed anyone. No mentor with connections. No luck that anyone could point to. But something shifted in him a few years ago, quietly, internally. And today he thinks differently, speaks differently, sees problems differently. Opportunities that are invisible to most people, he sees them clearly. What happened between them? It wasn't talent. It wasn't money. It wasn't even time. It was the way they learned. One consumed, the other educated himself. And those are two completely different things, and most people never understand the difference until it's almost too late. I want today to be the day you understand it. I want you to think about something for a moment. Think about the last time you spent 3 or 4 hours online. What did you watch? What did you read? What do you actually remember from it right now? Most people go completely blank, and that's not your fault. That's by design. The platforms you use every single day were built by some of the most intelligent psychologists and engineers on the planet, and their entire job was to make sure you keep scrolling. Not to make you smarter, not to help you grow, just to keep you there. One more second, one more video, one more post. And here's the painful truth. You can spend 10 years on the internet and come out knowing almost nothing that actually changes your life. But you can also spend 2 years, just 2 years, learning the right way, with the right psychology behind it, and completely transform how you think, how you earn, how you see yourself and the world. The difference is not discipline. It's not willpower. It's not being born smart. It's knowing how self-educated people actually think. And that's what we are going to go through today. Not 8 quick tips to paste on your notes app and forget. A genuine deep look at the psychology that separates people who grow from people who stay stuck even when they're trying. There's a concept in nutrition most people understand. You can eat every single day and still be malnourished. If everything going into your body lacks real nutrients, it doesn't matter how much you eat. You stay weak. Your mind works the exact same way. Most people today are mentally malnourished, not because they're not consuming. They're consuming more information than any human being in history ever has. But almost none of it has real nutritional value for their brain. One day it's a viral video about productivity. Next day it's a motivational clip. Next day it's drama, news, opinion, more motivation, a random fact, a life hack. And none of it connects. None of it builds into anything. It's all entertainment wearing the costume of knowledge. And here's the psychological trap nobody talks about. It actually feels like learning. Your brain gets a small dopamine hit when you watch something educational. You finish a 20-minute video and your brain says, "Good job, you learned today." But if someone asks you what you learned 3 days later, most people can't remember a single thing. The people who genuinely educate themselves do something radically different. They choose one thing, one topic, one skill, one domain, and they go deep. Not for a week, for months. They read about it, think about it, apply it, question it, come back to it. Think about it like digging a well. Most people dig 1 foot in 50 different places and wonder why they never find water. The person who commits to one spot and digs 30 feet deep, they find something real. Genius is not about knowing everything. It is about understanding something fully enough that you can build on it, connect it, use it. And that only comes from depth. So ask yourself honestly, what is the one thing that, if you truly understood it over the next 6 months, would actually change your life? Not what's trending, not what someone else told you to learn. What genuinely matters to you. Start there. Go deep. The breadth will come naturally later, but only after you know what depth feels like. Here's something that should change the way you learn forever. Your brain does not store information the way a hard drive does. You can't just pour knowledge in and expect it to stay. The brain stores what it uses. It remembers what it has to work for. It locks in what it connects to something emotional or active. Passive watching is the lowest form of learning. It feels productive, it requires almost nothing from you, and it gives you almost nothing back. The people who retain what they learn, who actually change their thinking, they do something different. They interact with information. After they read something, they close the book and explain it back to themselves in their own words. Not copy the summary, their own words. If they can't explain it simply, they know they don't actually understand it yet. They teach it. even if just to themselves, even if just out loud in an empty room, even if it's writing 2 paragraphs about what they just learned. Because the moment you try to teach something, your brain is forced to organize it, fill the gaps, make it coherent. There's a story about Richard Feynman, one of the greatest physicists of the 20th century. When he was a student, he kept a notebook, and in it he would write down concepts he was studying, but not in academic language, in simple, clear, almost childlike explanations. Because he believed that if you couldn't explain it simply, you hadn't really learned it. He called it his notebook of things he didn't know yet. Not things he knew, things he didn't know yet. That mindset, staying in the position of a learner, always checking your own understanding, always testing whether you truly get it, that is the psychology of a genuine self-educator. Stop watching just to feel like you learned something. Start watching with a pen, with a question in your mind, with the intention of using what you take in. Your brain will respond completely differently. I want to tell you something about books that no one frames correctly. A book is not just information. A book is a conversation with someone's lifetime. When you read a book by someone who spent 30 years building a business, studying human behavior, recovering from failure, navigating a world that didn't make space for them, you are getting the compressed essence of those 30 years in exchange for maybe 8 hours of your attention. That is one of the most unbelievably generous trades available to any human being right now, and almost nobody is taking it. The average person today reads less than 1 book a year, not because they're too busy, because short content has rewired their patience, because the brain, once adapted to 5-second clips, starts finding anything longer than a paragraph difficult. And this is exactly why reading is one of the most powerful things you can do right now. Not because books are magical, because so few people do it anymore that it gives you a genuine edge. But here's the psychology behind it that matters even more than the information inside the books. Reading trains your brain to sit with complexity, to hold a long idea in your mind without needing it resolved immediately, to follow an argument across pages, across chapters, across contradictions, and arrive somewhere new. That skill, the ability to think through something slowly, deeply, without distraction, is disappearing from most people's minds. And it is the exact skill required to understand difficult things, solve real problems, and build anything that matters. Even 10 pages a day, not a chapter if it feels too much. 10 pages done consistently for 1 year, that is roughly 15 books. 15 lifetimes of compressed experience living in your mind. You will not be the same person at the end of that year. That is not motivation speech. That is just what happens to a mind that is consistently fed things that require it to grow. There's something happening to your brain right now that most people don't realize until the damage is already done. Your attention span is shrinking, not as a metaphor. Literally, the part of your brain responsible for deep focus, for sustained, uninterrupted thinking, physically weakens when it's not used. Like a muscle, you stop training. And the way most people live today, phone in hand, from the moment they wake up, notifications pulling them out of every thought before it fully forms. Short videos replacing any content that requires more than 30 seconds of patience is actively destroying that capacity. Here's why this matters so deeply. Every meaningful thing in life requires sustained attention. Understanding a complex idea requires it. Building a real skill requires it. Having a genuine conversation requires it. Making a good decision requires it. Even knowing yourself, who you actually are, what you actually want, requires sitting with your own thoughts long enough to hear something honest. When your attention is fragmented, everything becomes shallow, and shallow thinking produces shallow results. The self-educated people who genuinely transform their lives protect their attention like it's their most valuable possession, because it is. They create windows in their day where nothing can interrupt them. Not a notification, not a conversation, not a quick check of the phone, just them and the thing they're trying to understand. And something remarkable happens in those windows. Your brain, given space and silence in a single direction, starts doing things it can never do when it's constantly interrupted. It makes connections, it sees patterns, it solves problems you didn't even consciously know you were working on. You were not born with a short attention span, you were trained into one. And the good news is you can train yourself back out of it. 1 hour of genuine focus a day is where it starts. Protect that hour, guard it, and watch what your mind starts producing learning when you give it the conditions it actually needs. The internet has created a strange and dangerous illusion because anyone can post, anyone can look like an expert, because production quality is accessible to everyone. A person with a ring light, a good microphone, and confident delivery can look indistinguishable from someone who actually knows what they're talking about. And most people, without realizing it, are being educated by people who have never actually done the thing they're teaching. This matters more than almost anything else in your self-education. Because if the knowledge you're building your understanding on is hollow, no matter how hard you study it, no matter how many notes you take, you are constructing your thinking on a foundation that has nothing real underneath it. The self-educated people who develop genuinely powerful minds are obsessive about the quality of their sources. They read about people who actually built something. They study the thinking of people who face real consequences for being wrong. They read primary sources, not just what someone said about what someone said. Read biographies, not because successful people are perfect, but because a biography shows you how someone actually thinks under pressure, how they made decisions with incomplete information, how they recovered from failure, how they saw the world differently from everyone around them. That kind of learning does something to your mind that no motivational content ever can. It shows you reality. And reality, even when it's difficult, makes you smarter, faster than anything else. There is one practice that almost every deeply intelligent person throughout history has shared. They wrote, not for an audience, not for performance, for themselves. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful men who ever lived, kept a private journal for decades. He never intended anyone to read it. He was writing to organize his own thinking, challenge his own assumptions, and understand himself more clearly. What he left behind became one of the most read books in human history. Writing does something to your thinking that nothing else replicates. When you try to put a thought into words, your brain is forced to find the edges of it, to discover what you actually believe versus what you assumed you believed, to notice where your understanding is solid and where it disappears into vagueness. You will often start writing something you think you understand and halfway through realize you don't understand it at all. That is not a failure. That is the writing working exactly as it should. Even if it is just 5 minutes at the end of the day, what did I learn today? What am I confused about? What do I want to think more about? You are training your mind to process rather than just consume. And that processing is where genuine intelligence is built.